You may or may not have known that 19 states let schools physically discipline their students. Kansas is one of them. But listen to this. One state rep wants to let parents and educators spank harder.
Gail Finney is a Democrat from Wichita. She wants to allow up to 10 strikes of the hand. Redness and bruising on the skin would be allowed. Finney says it's about restoring parental rights and clarifying what's legal. But some experts say that any form of spanking is bad.
20, 30 years ago, we didn't sit in car seats, and yet we do now. And so maybe they did spank or were spanked as a child, but now we have research that has shown that it is less effective than timeout. It tends to lead to more aggressive behaviors with the child.
We're going to talk about this with Jada Watt. She is a student who actually received a disciplinary paddling at her school in Texas and was bruised. There's Jada, you can see her. Also, Dr. Daniel Bober, he's a pediatric psychiatrist in Miami. Also joining us, our legal analyst, Sunny Hostin.
And remember here, what we're talking about is the legal right, in a way, to spank harder, to bruise, to leave a mark. So, Jada, I have to ask you first, this happened to you. So, did it occur to you that being spanked harder would have made a difference in your behavior? Does that make it more or less effective as a punishment?
It was definitely less effective.
Your mother, I should say, Jada, you know, your mother gave permission to the school, give them the right to have you disciplined physically like this. What was her thinking when she gave that permission?
She was under the impression that that a female was going to be doing it, that's always been the school rule, and she didn't know that it was going to be changed like that.
And it ended up being a male educator that gave you the paddling. Has your behavior changed, Jada?
I'm sorry?
Has your behavior changed at school because of this? You can be honest.
It didn't really change anything. It just made things more awkward.
Yeah,
More
weird,
awkward.
right?
Interesting. Okay, well, let's bring in Sunny because I want to talk about this from a legal perspective. And it's really important that we clarify this. Yeah. This came about because there was confusion about the existing law. Spanking was allowed in schools, but they wanted to implement this rule that would clarify this confusion about what was deemed child abuse and what was not.
I know, and I think that's what's so interesting. Many people don't even realize that in public schools, in 19 states, it is allowed. And in fact, schools are the only public institution that really allow spanking or hitting, because it's not allowed in prisons, it's not allowed in hospitals, it's not allowed in the military, it's not allowed in mental institutions.
Approval, though, too.
Well, that's not always the case. It's interesting because some states, yes, the parent has to sign a consent form to spanking. Some states, they have to sign a waiver. Many states, they can do it even without the parent's permission and even against the parent's permission. So I think that is fascinating, but the one defense has always been excessive force. Now in Kansas, we're talking about excessive force being okay, leaving a mark. And so I think that's where the tension has always been, but it's allowed.
Clarifying the rules, that's what they say they're trying to do in Kansas, where, by the way, they do require parental consent for teachers to do it. I want to talk to Dr. Daniel Bober here right now. Dr. Bober, you know, I'm a parent. I have 2 kids. You know, I think Sunny's a parent too. I mean, you know, you want to wring your kid's neck sometimes. I mean, I think we can all stipulate that. But my fear is always that if I were ever to physically discipline them, they would just turn around and do that to someone else. They copy everything.
Right.
Well, you know, this is basically state-sanctioned child abuse. The research is pretty clear on this. It may be legally right, but it's morally wrong. And spanking your child adds to more aggression in children. It's even been associated with delinquent and criminal behavior, and it erodes trust between parents and children. So I think it's a pretty bad thing.
So, Daniel, there's going to be somebody that's going to say this, and let me play devil's advocate. We were spanked. We turned out okay. I'm not a violent person. Why? What would you say to them?
I would say, of course, there's many more variables than going on than just that they happen to be spanked. But the thing is that timeouts work just as well as spanking, and it doesn't encourage kids to resolve their disputes with physical aggression, which I think is what we need less of in society. So I think that this is basically state-sanctioned child abuse, and I don't think it's the way to go, and I think it sends the wrong message.
Want to read the statement now from the representative who was proposing this bill. She made a statement on Twitter. She says she's aware of the blowback on this. We reached out to her. We didn't get a response, but she does say this legislation is intended to provide guidance to state officials in the administrative and judicial branches, serve as a guideline to parents, and protect Kansas children from abuse. This legislation is not, as has been incorrectly reported, she says, intended to legalize child abuse in Kansas.
Part of a bigger conversation that maybe we can have going down the road. Spanking in the home, spanking in the schools, you know, again, you can find arguments on both sides. But at one point is that I don't think any of us understand the idea to spank harder. Sunny Hostin, Jada Watt, and Dr. Daniel Bober, what a pleasure to have you here to discuss something that a lot of families are talking about today.
Thank you.
Thank you.